The lecture dome shimmered under the sterile light of orbiting suns, its transparent walls bending the stars into streaks of violet and blue. The air hummed with a low, living vibration, the faint pulse of the ship-sized habitat known as Lunaris Academy, the crown jewel of galactic academia. Hundreds of species gathered there, each from worlds so distant and hostile that even their languages pulsed with danger or melody. But today, the tension came not from rivalry or intellect. It came from the lone human sitting in the third row. Eli Grant. Terran. Deathworlder. The name alone carried the kind of weight that made soft-bodied species flinch. Deathworlders were whispered legends, creatures evolved on planets that killed for sport. Where others cultivated peace, they had clawed survival from a biosphere that actively hated them. And yet, one sat here, tapping his stylus against a datapad, looking as casual as if he were waiting for a bus. Professor Varlowen's translucent appendages trembled slightly as he addressed the class. Today's topic, he said, his voice echoing through 3 sets of vocal sacs, concerns predator-prey dynamics, particularly apex predation across biospheres. Several students folded in on themselves protectively. The aquatic Voran slithered deeper into his containment suit, and the avian Keely clicked her beak in discomfort. The professor continued, glancing nervously at Eli. Our lab demonstration will explore survival responses. Mr. Grant has volunteered for extra credit. Eli grinned, teeth gleaming like a predator's. Figured I'd make it interesting. The class collectively recoiled. Even through the airtight dome, tension thickened the air. The holopads flickered, and the central platform dimmed. From the far wall, a containment field activated with a crackling pulse, bathing the room in ultraviolet light. The display cube shimmered, and within it appeared a nightmare. 8 feet tall, scales glistening with wet black sheen, for primary arms tipped with talons, secondary limbs twitching like coiled serpents. The galactic apex predator of the Varkan sector, a Sylphrex. Born from volcanic jungles. One of the deadliest species known to sentient study. Every student froze. The Sylphrex sniffed the air, its maw splitting open into layers of fangs that steamed with acidic vapor. This, Professor Varlowen whispered, is the highest-tier predator in the quadrant. Capable of shredding starship plating when enraged. Its containment field is. The lights flickered. A siren wailed. The containment field sputtered. And then it collapsed. The sound that followed wasn't a roar. It was deeper. More primal. The kind of sound evolution buried in every creature's DNA to remind them of mortality. Students screamed in every tongue known to the stars. Desks overturned. Wings beat frantically against the dome ceiling. Gelatinous forms splattered in terror as the Sylphrex leapt into the lecture hall, claws carving grooves into the alloy floor. Eli was already on his feet. He didn't run. He didn't scream. He rolled his shoulders and said, quietly, "Guess we're doing this for real, huh?" The alien students stared in frozen horror as the human stepped toward the creature, barehanded. Professor Varlowen's voice broke into static panic. Security. Containment breach in Lecture Hall 7. Activate. The comms cut. The lights died. The emergency strobes painted everything red. Eli's silhouette moved against the flickering light, calm, deliberate. The Sylphrex hissed and charged. Metal screamed as claws met flooring. The Deathworlder moved like liquid violence, sidestepping, ducking under a swipe, grabbing a desk and smashing it across the creature's snout. The impact thundered through the hall. It didn't even slow. Eli cursed and dove aside as the monster's talons tore through the air where his torso had been. The class watched, trembling, as he ripped a loose power conduit from the wall, sparks flying. "Let's see how you like electricity," he muttered. The Sylphrex lunged again. Eli jammed the sparking cable into its chest and pulled the trigger. The room flashed white. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. The predator screeched, a sound that shattered every eardrum that wasn't cybernetically protected. Then it tackled him. The two crashed into the wall, shattering reinforced panels. Eli's breath left him in a grunt, ribs cracking audibly. But instead of yielding, the Deathworlder laughed, short, sharp, reckless laughter that made even the predator hesitate for a second. "That all you got?" he hissed through bloodied teeth. He grabbed one of its mandibles and twisted. The Sylphrex shrieked, throwing him back, but he held on, arms straining, veins standing out like cables. With a burst of raw, primal strength, Eli ripped the mandible half free, acid spraying across his forearm. The smell of burning flesh mixed with ozone. Alien students cowered behind their desks. A gelatinous species named Zur whimpered, he's not supposed to survive that." Professor Varlowen whispered, "Humans never follow probability." The fight tore through the hall, walls dented, consoles shattered, glass exploding into the air like frozen rain. Eli's movements slowed, he was bleeding, breathing raggedly. The Sylphrex circled him, wounded but still monstrously strong. For a moment, all was silent but the hum of the failing emergency lights. The predator lunged once more, its claws a blur of motion. Eli caught its wrist. For a second, impossibility held its breath. Then, with a roar that shook the structure, he threw it. The Sylphrex smashed through a console and didn't rise. Smoke drifted through the flickering red light. Eli stood swaying, one arm hanging uselessly, chest heaving. Slowly, he looked up at the stunned classroom. "So, that extra credit's still good?" Silence. Utter, disbelieving silence. Then a faint click as the professor fumbled with his recorder. "Mr. Grant, you wrestled a Sylphrex. With your hands." Eli winced and spat blood. "Hey, I said I'd make it interesting." The professor trembled. "You are insane." "Yeah," Eli said, grinning faintly. "We call it ambition on Earth." He stumbled, the adrenaline finally giving way. The alien students rushed to the far end of the hall, giving him a 30-foot radius of fearful respect. Outside, security drones finally arrived, scanning the carnage. One drone paused beside the broken Sylphrex body. "Specimen terminated," it reported in a sterile tone. Professor Varlowen stared at the human, still standing. "You killed it." Eli blinked. "Oh." He turned, looking at the motionless heap. "Wasn't trying to. Guess I overdid it." The professor's appendages trembled. "Human, you have no idea what you've just done." The lights flickered back to life. Somewhere in the deep halls of Lunaris Academy, a containment alert changed from yellow to black. In the corner of the screen, a code flashed, Class Extinction Risk Protocol, Human Active. And as Eli limped toward the door, unaware of what his extra credit had set in motion, the alien students whispered one word that would echo through the Galactic Academies for centuries. Deathworlder. The silence after the battle was almost sacred. The smell of scorched ozone and blood lingered in the air as med drones floated through the wrecked lecture hall, scanning debris and broken panels with clinical indifference. The alien students were still clustered against the far wall, their translucent or scaled or feathered bodies trembling with the kind of terror only a predator's aftermath could summon. Eli Grant sat on a shattered desk, his shirt torn, his forearm wrapped hastily in a strip of his own jacket. He looked exhausted, but alive. His eyes, though dulled by pain, still carried that glint. That stubborn, reckless human spark. Professor Varlowen hovered at a distance, trying to compose his report to the Academy authorities. His appendages quivered each time his gaze flicked to the Sylphrex corpse. "You cannot comprehend," he whispered, voice shivering across 3 tones. "That creature was part of a controlled specimen program. It was not meant to die, human." Eli wiped blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. "Hey, I didn't mean to kill it. I just didn't feel like getting turned into lunch." "Lunch," Varlowen repeated hollowly, as though testing a word from a lost language. The door hissed open. A detachment of Galactic enforcement officers stormed in, sleek armor, mirrored visors, weapons humming with containment energy. Behind them strode a tall figure with chitinous skin the color of old bronze. Dean Zerkal of Lunaris Academy. Even the drones seemed to slow in his presence. The dean stopped in front of the wreckage, staring at Eli. "Is it true?" he asked, voice cold and precise. "You engaged a live Sylphrex with no weapons."
Eli raised an eyebrow. You say that like I had options. One of the officers stepped forward. Dean, the human's claim is consistent with sensor data. Containment failed. Subject responded instinctively. The dean turned slowly toward the others in the hall. And the containment failure? No one answered. A few alien students whimpered softly. Eli sighed. Look, if this is about property damage, I can.
Silence, the dean snapped, his mandibles flaring slightly. You killed a creature classified as Galactic Apex Alpha. That was the only living specimen in existence. You have just nullified 12 years of research. Eli blinked. Sorry? The dean's eyes glowed faintly amber. You apologize? He gestured sharply. Take him to the observation chamber. The guards advanced. Eli's instinctive stance shifted, knees slightly bent, hands loose. But the dean raised a claw. You will not be harmed. Yet. Eli hesitated, then nodded. Fine. But someone better explain what's going on. As they led him away, Professor Varlowen exhaled with visible relief and then with dread. Because deep inside his mind, he knew what was coming. The death of the Sylphrex wouldn't just trigger a bureaucratic uproar. It would awaken interest. From people far beyond the Academy. Observation Deck 7. Hours later, the human sat in a reinforced chamber surrounded by shimmering energy walls. His wounds had been treated, crudely but efficiently, by the Academy's AudioBook. He sat shirtless, bruised, stitched, and still somehow smirking. Through the one-way barrier, Dean Zerkal observed him with several other officials. Holographic displays rotated around them, replaying security footage of the fight in stark, horrifying clarity. Look at him, hissed the Voth representative, a crystalline being whose facets flickered with agitation. He should not exist. That level of strength, speed, and resilience no known Deathworlde species performs at that capacity unaided. Professor Varlowen's voice trembled. Humans have always been outliers. Their physiology adapts violently to stress. Their instincts are rooted in predation. They are not safe. Another voice entered the room, soft, almost amused. Safe isn't the word I'd use. All heads turned. A woman stepped from the shadows of the observation deck, humanoid but not entirely so. Her skin shimmered faintly with the mirrored hue of starlight. Agent Kalira of the Galactic Security Directorate. She smiled thinly as her eyes lingered on Eli's image. Earth has a reputation, doesn't it? One world that refuses to die. Its people, same story. The dean's mandibles clicked sharply. Agent, your presence here is irregular. Protocol 77 authorizes my involvement when extinction-class species are confirmed active, Kalira said calmly. And that, she nodded toward the screen, is extinction potential wrapped in muscle and sarcasm. The footage looped again, Eli ripping the Sylphrex mandible out by sheer force, then hurling the creature across the room. The officials watched in uneasy silence. He's just a student, Varlowen murmured weakly. Kalira tilted her head. A student who could dismantle one of the deadliest organisms in our records. Imagine if there were more like him. A hush fell. The dean exhaled slowly, his breath rasping like sand. We cannot let word of this spread. The galactic communities already distrust Deathworlders. If they learn a human killed a Sylphrex in single combat, they'll panic, Kalira finished. And panic breeds policy. Professor Varlowen looked pained. What will you do with him? Kalira's expression was unreadable. Observe. Assess. And if necessary, contain. Inside the chamber. Eli stared at the mirrored wall, flexing his injured hand. You know, he said loudly, if you guys are gonna stare, at least buy me dinner first. There was a faint hum from the hidden speakers. A pause. Then Kalira's voice, calm but edged, Mr. Grant, do you understand what you've done? He shrugged. I aced the assignment? A long silence. Then she said, That creature you killed was under controlled observation.
It was engineered from extinct apex DNA. Its existence was a diplomatic secret between 5 civilizations. Eli frowned.
And it tried to eat me.
You're welcome.
You don't understand, human, she said softly.
You shouldn't have been able to kill it at all.
Eli leaned forward, eyes narrowing.
What are you saying?
I'm saying the data doesn't add up, Kalira replied. Your body mass, your reflexes, our sensors recorded output levels 20 times normal human baseline.
For 3 minutes, you were operating outside known physiology. Eli blinked. So what, you think I'm some kind of mutant?
We think Earth isn't telling the galaxy everything, she said. And now, thanks to your little display, every intelligence network will come sniffing around for answers.
Eli leaned back, jaw tightening. I didn't ask to be part of your politics. I just wanted the damn extra credit.
Kalira's voice softened, almost sympathetic. And now, you might have changed how the galaxy sees your entire species.
Hours later, when the observation deck emptied and the lights dimmed, Professor Varlowen lingered alone.
He watched the human through the glass, guilt twisting his features. He whispered to himself, they'll destroy him. Or worse, study him.
Eli caught the movement.
He turned his head and met the professor's gaze through the glass, eyes steady, calm. Then, faintly, he smiled.
Don't worry, document. I've been through worse.
Something in his tone, something resolute and almost ancient, sent a chill through Varlowen's translucent veins. For the first time, the professor wondered if the galaxy's greatest threat wasn't the predators it had catalogued, but the species it had invited into its classrooms.
The next morning, Lunaris Academy didn't wake. It shivered.
Every corridor, every floating bridge between its domes, buzzed with whispers.
Security drones doubled their patrols. Rumors passed from one alien species to another faster than data pulses.
Some claimed the human was a government weapon. Others said he was the reincarnation of an ancient war god.
None of them were entirely wrong.
Inside Observation Chamber 7, Eli Grant sat quietly. He'd been there nearly 20 hours.
No food. No explanation. Just endless silence and the faint hum of the containment field.
He'd spent most of that time staring at his hands. The knuckles swollen, the skin mottled with bruises and half-healed burns. They didn't look like the hands of a student. They looked like the aftermath of something ancient, something that had survived everything the universe could throw at it. He flexed them once, and the bruises ached. So much for extra credit, he muttered. The door hissed open.
Agent Kalira entered. No guards this time.
She held a data pad against her chest, her mirrored eyes reflecting the low light.
Mr. Grant, she said softly, we have a problem. Eli smirked. You're gonna have to narrow that down.
Kalira stepped closer. Word of what happened has leaked.
3 systems already sent diplomatic protests. The Sylphrex species was considered a cultural relic by the Trin Dominion. They want you extradited. Extradited? Eli asked. For not dying? She didn't smile.
For killing something they considered sacred.
He leaned back, sighing. You've got to be kidding me. I wish I were.
Behind her, the door slid open again.
Dean Zerkal entered, followed by 2 armored officers.
His amber eyes glowed faintly. Human, he said coldly, you will surrender yourself to the Trin Dominion delegation immediately. It is the Council's decision.
Eli looked between them. You're just handing me over? The Academy cannot shield a Deathworlder from galactic law, Zerkal said. You are a liability. Kalira's voice hardened. Dean, that's not your call.
He's under Directorate custody.
Not anymore, Zerkal snapped. The Council voted. He is to be removed from Lunaris within the hour.
The officers stepped forward.
Eli didn't move, but the air changed.
It was subtle at first, the kind of tension predators feel before a storm. The hum of the containment field shifted pitch.
Kalira's mirrored eyes flicked to him.
Eli, she said carefully, don't.
He held up a hand. I'm not starting anything. He stood slowly. But you people keep forgetting something.
Zerkal's mandibles twitched.
And what is that, human? Eli's eyes hardened. I didn't come here to fight your wars. I came here to learn.
You wanted to study me, to classify me like an animal, but the truth is, you don't get us.
You can't.
He took a step forward. You think being a Deathworlder makes us dangerous.
You're wrong.
Kalira's voice was soft.
Then what does?
Eli looked her dead in the eyes.
We don't quit.
Ever. You can cage us, threaten us, burn us, but we'll crawl through fire before we bow.
For a moment, no one spoke.
The silence was thick enough to choke on. Then the deck lights flickered. A tremor rippled through the structure.
The officers turned, scanning their visors. Power surge in Sector 3, one reported. Kalira frowned. That's the biocontainment wing.
Before she could finish, the intercom blared a harsh tone.
Warning. Containment breach. Level 10. Multiple apex specimens released. The Dean stiffened. What? How? Kalira's datapad flashed red. Failsafe override. Someone triggered it from internal access. Eli muttered under his breath. Guess karma doesn't take coffee breaks.
The deck shook again, this time harder.
Distant screams echoed through the hallways.
From somewhere deep in the complex came a sound like tearing metal, followed by the unmistakable roar of something alive.
Zerkal barked an order to the officers. Secure the human. The wall exploded. A massive shape slammed through reinforced alloy, scattering fragments like paper. It wasn't a Silthrex, it was something worse.
A Silthrex Prime, nearly twice the size, with armor like plating and molten eyes.
The Dean froze. Impossible. That was. Kalira didn't hesitate. She grabbed Eli's arm. Move.
The Prime's claws ripped through the room.
One officer vanished in a single swipe.
Kalira shoved Eli through the doorway as alarms screamed. They sprinted through the corridor, the air filling with smoke and the thunder of pursuit.
Tell me that thing's not here for me. Eli shouted. Kalira's breath came fast. It's drawn to pheromonal residue from the one you killed.
Fantastic, Eli muttered.
So it's personal.
They burst into the central lift chamber. The lift was gone, the shaft opened to the Academy's core. The Prime's roar echoed closer.
Kalira looked at him. There's an emergency drop shaft 2 decks down. Eli didn't wait. He jumped. He landed hard, rolling as sparks sprayed around him. Kalira followed, landing less gracefully but alive.
The Prime crashed through the ceiling above, its claws digging into the edges of the shaft.
Eli, she shouted. You can't fight that thing.
He grinned grimly.
Guess I'll find out. He tore a loose plasma conduit from the wall, electricity arcing. The Prime dropped through the ceiling, all teeth and fury. Eli ducked under its first strike and slammed the conduit into its chest. The explosion lit the shaft like a supernova.
Kalira covered her face as the blast wave roared past. When the light faded, smoke poured from the wreckage and Eli was gone. She shouted his name once.
Twice. Nothing.
The Prime twitched once, then collapsed.
Dead. Kalira stumbled forward, scanning the debris.
Then she saw movement, a bloodied hand pulling itself free from under a half-melted panel. Eli rose, limping, skin scorched but alive.
Again.
She stared at him, disbelief giving way to something else, awe.
You should be dead. He smirked weakly. I get that a lot. Above them, security sirens faded as containment systems re-engaged.
The Prime's body was dragged back into stasis by drones. The breach was over. But the story wasn't.
Later, the aftermath. The Academy lay scarred. Half its dome sealed, dozens injured.
But it still floated, and so did the legend. The official report would claim the human acted under supervision, that he'd saved the Academy from total destruction. But the whispers told a different story of a Deathworlder who could not die, who faced monsters from the edge of creation and walked away. Eli Grant sat on the Academy terrace days later, arm in a sling, gazing at the starfield beyond the glass. Kalira approached quietly. "You're leaving," she said.
He nodded. "Yeah. Figure I've caused enough panic for one semester."
She studied him for a long moment.
"You could stay. Teach them what you are."
He smiled faintly.
"They wouldn't understand." "Not yet." Kalira's mirrored eyes softened. "And if they come for you?"
Eli turned toward the stars, that same glint in his eyes, the unkillable, untamable spark of Earth. "Then they'll learn what every predator learns sooner or later." She tilted her head.
"What's that?" "That's some prey bites back."
He stood, shoulders squared, and walked toward the transport bay. The doors closed behind him with a hiss, and the legend of the Deathworlder began its long, unstoppable spread across the stars.
Epilogue. In a distant council chamber, holograms of 100 species flickered to life. The footage of Eli Grant's battles played again and again, slowed, analyzed, dissected. One counselor whispered, "If one human can do that, what happens if Earth sends more?" Another replied, "Then the galaxy changes. Forever." And somewhere, far away, aboard a ship heading home, Eli Grant leaned back in his seat and muttered with a tired grin. "Next time, I'm taking history class."